And now on to one of my favourite looking teams of the entire league, the Oni Warriors. Doesn't this team just look right? Doesn't this just... something in my heart tells me this team is meant to be.
Part 3 now, and it's the Oni Warriors. The Oh No Warriors. The Oni homies. It's going to be a hard one. Because this hurts. This hurts. Yes, the Oni Warriors, consisting of the previous Space Station, Renegades Core, Nika, Dardes, Vote NBK into solo, mid, ADC, and then to fill the hole left by Cherio and Rafa, who do you slot in but reigning world champions Neil Ma and Cuvo Fred? What could go wrong? So I kind of touched on this in my video on reviewing the new rosters that have been announced. This team hurt me, man. This team hurt me emotionally. When I saw these lineups being released for the very first time, I thought that is a top tier team.
I think this team is... could this be the one that gets Dardes, Nika and stuff like that, their first world title? I think there's a lot of potential here. Yeah, I think this team is brilliant. I just love the look of it, and I'm really excited to see them play. These guys are going to be wanting to finish right at the top. These guys are going to be challenging for worlds. I think they're going to be a real contender to this Ghost team. They've got the quality to definitely... well, they could make it 3 times in a row for Neilmar to become the first player to ever go back to back to back.
The Renegade Space Station lot had been top 2, top 3 at worst for 2 years straight, and we all knew just how good PK can be, and they fancied turning up. Put the two together, it's a recipe for great success. Players that I really liked, players that I wanted to see succeed, and players that I thought were really generally underrated when people talk about the best players in any role. And I thought, now is their time to shine. Shine they did not. So let's go over this from the beginning, because as was the case with the Valkyries, there is one tiny weensy thing kind of looming over their first year, and that was a little thing. What was it called? COVID. Yeah, that's the one. Which kind of fucked up the entire world for a year straight. Although Neil Ma is in North America, he was in Canada, so he wasn't safe. Even the person in the right continent still had big ping issues, whereas the rest of the team, they just didn't really have a chance. Again, just like the Valkyries, they're playing from Europe. They're locked in, locked down, wherever they are, and playing on big amounts of ping, which just instantly limits some picks. Like, you just cannot play something like Ra, for example. Anything that has particularly hard to aim skill shots. Lots of Nemesis and Noir instead, maybe. So yeah, ping diff was a thing, and it's fair to say that this team didn't start very hot. And by not starting hot, what I actually mean was they started god awfully. In a league featuring the Valhalla Valkyries in the state they were in and the new look Solar Scarabs, they still managed to finish bottom first split, which was, even for a team with ping issues, a big disappointment. But I don't think that ever really got them down. I think they always had a good belief in themselves that they're just the victim of an unfortunate circumstance, and that once things cleared up, once this all blows over, it'll all be fine. As things progressed, they started to go a bit better. They looked quite good in the first tournament that came around. I think they finished like 3rd or 4th, somewhere around there. And they managed to hold on to the solid 6th place, which is kind of where you'd expect them to be. Not in a perfect world, but you'd expect them to be in terms of being better than the Valks and the Scarabs. They're really struggling from ping issues. And this kind of continued for a while, where basically they just stuck around 6th until people started to move down for Worlds. And now we can actually kind of, once the pandemic cleared up and all of this stuff, you could start talking properly about their play, because I felt like all the criticism up to that point, you can say, oh yeah, they look a bit, unsure, maybe a bit inconsistent, blah, blah, blah. But they're playing on ping. That's kind of what every discussion went like, oh yeah, but they're playing on ping. But the tournament started to come around, and they managed to get players into the country, and you could finally say, okay, no, this is actually just how the team is. And there is a word that I'll be mentioning a lot throughout the course of this video, I imagine, which is consistency. The bane of this team's existence was consistency.
So I don't think they're going to be the most consistent team over the season. I feel like they're going to be one of those that's their ups are massive, and then they just have these games where it all goes horribly wrong.
The story of this team was a team that had flashes of brilliance and moments you think, yes, they've done it. They've worked it out. They've cracked the code. They know how they want to play, and they are going to... this is it. This is when they're really going to turn it around. Spoiler alert, that never quite happened. So unfortunately, they only kind of got their players to America about 3 weeks before Worlds. It didn't go well. They lost, and then they had another chance to qualify to the losers bracket and lost to the up-and-coming Solar Scarabs. And it was just a real disappointment for the teams. I think for them, it just felt like a year, not wasted, but just like a year that should just be forgotten, you know. A year that they can, I mean, at least they can mentally write it off and say, oh, you know, it's bad ping, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, you only have so many seasons in the league, and to have a whole year just written off, nothing really achieved, I think it was tough on them. But they really like the team, and they believe now they've got everyone in the country, we can turn it around next year. First, they had to qualify, which involved going through quite a difficult playoffs tournament. They looked shaky at first. I had them down as being comfortable winners. They weren't really going to break a sweat. They did break sweat. They broke many sweats, but they did win. So that's good at least. But it wasn't clean. It wasn't easy. But they defeated the mighty Winner Dogs and got themselves back into the league. No roster changes. So round 2, the slate is clean. Let's have another go. And this year was night and day at first. They started off the season and they looked good. The Only Warriors were back. They were here. They just arrived. I don't know. They were somewhere. But what was important is that they were winning. They were winning games. They finished that split 3rd, I think. Top 4 for sure. And they looked good. They looked good. It felt like their consistency had finally been found. This would then get shot down when they then finished 6th in the next split. Consistency back off the menu. You could at least see the team they were trying to be this whole time. Although it felt like they couldn't beat some teams like the Dragons, and they had real problems with the Bolts for some reason. They also had really good moments where they beat very, very strong teams. When they were on, this team looked really, really good. It had that PK style where when they were on, they looked unbeatable. When they were off, they looked shite. Throughout this period, I think that the theme of these games was the Nika carry project. The man put the backpack on. Some of his KDA performances were just insane, absolutely bonkers. And I think Vote looked really good too. Vote's just a very consistent player. The rest of the team, much less consistent, unfortunately. But still, every now and then they popped up with good performances, like another good showing in the summer tournament, where it looked like, okay, there's something to challenge the big boys. Getting closer and closer to Worlds, and they're looking better and better. This is good. This is good. And Phase 3 came around, and I thought, this is it. This is it. Come on. They looked good. And they looked better than they had done before in terms of they looked organized. They looked like they knew what they wanted to do. And they looked like they had lost that overriding thing where I feel like if I had to just sum up the Onis before then, it would be a team that you feel like should always be winning. Like they're in the position to do so, but they kind of just never really had the ideas. They never really knew what they wanted to do. They let other teams decide the pace of the game. And it often backfired. But this time it was different. They were playing regular season teams, and it felt like, despite me having said this about 8 times in this video already, it felt like they were finally here. This is the thing, it felt like it didn't feel like a false dawn this time. It felt like the actual real thing. And just before Worlds, that's good timing. But as is tradition for the Only Warriors, they decided that consistency is their greatest enemy. And the second half of the final split saw quite a big decline. They started to plummet a bit. Not plummet, because they finished 4th, so it's not the end of the world. But they lost that cutting edge. They lost that feeling of knowing what they were doing. And they lost to the Scarabs when the Scarabs were in a really weird space and just changing players all the time. It was a bad omen. So coming up to qualification for Worlds, the Only Warriors had to scrap through the play-in tournament, which was a battle. They really, really fought to get through there. And maybe it should have been easier for them than it was. But what's important is that they qualified. And they finished top. And you could see how much it meant to them. They were getting emotional. I think Nika started tearing up at one point. Like, these guys really enjoy playing together.
Nika, I talked about this on the cast a little bit. You start the year in an SPL qualifier tournament, right? It's a stressful beginning to your year. You had some highs and lows throughout the year. Was it a similar feeling this weekend? Last chance, either you go on, you go home. Describe kind of the parallels between the beginning and now this weekend.
I think the beginning was, personally, it was less stressful because I was like very sure that we'd make it, but like if we didn't make Worlds 2 years in a row, it would just feel like it was wasted, you know? Right. So it was very, like, I'm emotional. Like, that was crazy.
Look, we're so proud of you guys. Such a fun team to watch.
They're a really solid core, and they just all wanted each other to succeed more than anything. So what was then really hard to see was to see them turn up at Worlds and just get kind of swept away. In the back of my mind, there was this thinking of maybe they're on. Maybe they turn up and they just look like that PK team of old. They look like the space station. and just they're all there and they're all switched on, and they just weren't. They got beaten quite comfortably, and that ended the story of the only Warriors. Cuva retired, Neil's gone into coaching, and just leaves you with this kind of feeling of emptiness, the feeling of what could have been. These guys underachieved. And it's hard to say that because there's so many kind of mitigating factors. They had a whole first year that was kind of decided by COVID. It was kind of not out of their hands, but it was, I mean, COVID was the main talking point, and they never really felt they had a chance to grow and improve. But when they did have that chance, they still didn't grasp it. And I think this team will be remembered as a team of underperformers, which is sad because they had incredible games, incredible periods, some players with some real standout performances. I think Nika has to be the one that goes down as the guy who, he was that guy. He was just that guy. But at the end of the day, no tournament wins, no particularly high finishes in the league. Out of 8, I think their highest was 3rd, which is good. That's not even in the top quarter, you know. So that's the theme of this team, the team that could have been. It's a team that really liked each other, stuck together, no changes through the entire period, which is unlike any other team. No other team managed that. So there's a lot to be admired about that, I think. But at the same time, you just felt like more could have been done. You just felt like if they had been in one of their hot streaks at the right time, this could be a very different story. But what's the silver lining to all this? The silver lining is that the story doesn't end there. The only Warriors brand may be on a different team now, but the core of Nika, Vogt and Dardez is still going on strong. But who have they brought in now but PBM and Lasbra? By the time this video goes out, we might have a better idea of what that team looks like. I have no idea when these are going to be released. But as of the time of filming, this was just announced like 2 days ago. So it's all still a bit up in the air, but still got high hopes. This is the time they're going to come good. I know I said that 8 other times previously, but this is the time they're going to come good. They've got some aggression in the jungle, aggression in the support role to back up 3 class mechanical players. This can only go well. The only homies shall rise again. Nika and Vogt and Dardez are all going to get their rings. Going to get Lasbra the ring too. Make Mike the 2-time. Oh god, they're just going to hurt me again, aren't they? But I'm glad this team is staying together. I'm glad they're giving it another shot and giving them a chance to change the view of them as underperformers. Mike has always wanted to team with Dardez, so it seems like a natural swap. Come on, boys. Just find some consistency. Just find some consistency, and you're there. So not the most dramatic of teams. A lot less to talk about than compared to the Scarabs, for example, or the Valks. But next in line is the Zappy boys themselves. Not like Zapman. Like, that's like a Zeus joke. It's the Bolts. It's the Bolts. And bit more to say there.